Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. My name is Paul Klingen, and I'm your host. I'm a former advertising professional turned fitness coach where I use my E4 fitness method to help people with their training, nutrition, recovery, and mental performance. You'll hear all the different tips, tricks, and research that I use for myself and my clients to see results in those fields. I'll also bring on experts so that we can deep dive into specific topics. Ultimately, the goal is to help you take your fitness to the next level so that you can live the life that you want to live. So buckle up, take some notes, and let's roll. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. Paul Klingen here, your host, and today we got a good one. We're going to dive into not just fun little stories about fitness and training. I'm not just going to dive into my experience at Disneyland and the little story that I got for you guys there, but we're going to be diving into some deeper stuff, anxiety and the self-determination theory, as well as my personal experience with body dysmorphia and just how that has, grown and evolved and where I'm at now with it over the course of my life. So first, foremost, I want to start with one of the things I did this last weekend that was really fun. I went to Disneyland, and anyone who's been to Disneyland before knows that it is, I would say, really fun, but it's also just like a zoo. You're walking we did 10 miles, I think, 20,000 steps. And one of the things I was super excited for was going to Galaxy's Edge, which is the new Star Wars area. And so I was able to really feel like a kid in this totally immersive. You got like the Millennium Falcon, you got the Rise of the Resistance rides, and it's so fun. And that was something that I spent like half the day doing. Haley and I spent half the day in this part of the park, went to California Adventure, did a bunch of other things, and had a blast. But I remember being in the ride and actually like feeling like a kid. And there were times where I teared up, and I was like, man, like I'm so excited right now. Like even right now, if you're watching the YouTube, you can see just how excited I am. But one of the things we were doing, or one of the things we were talking about as we were walking around is like, oh, what's your favorite ride? What's your favorite food? Haley loves the churros and the corn dogs. I love the soft serve ice cream. And so we're like, oh, what's your favorite ride? Little side note, Splash Mountain is far off the list now. That fell off when we had to sit in the front and we got our shoes completely soaked and we were walking in just wet socks for like 6-8 hours. Anyway, one of the other questions was, what's your favorite movie? And we kind of filtered it with like, okay, OG movie, like original, Disney movie on the VHS. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, that's a tough one. And I didn't want to be, I guess, basic is it the first thing that comes to mind with The Lion King, but that's what I landed on. And it wasn't necessarily because Lion King is like this great movie, but one of the things I remember about it is the specific scene where Simba, he has his date with Nala. And I was going back and watching this on YouTube, which is how I remember like the specifics. But then he's walking, and basically Rafiki comes up, and he's like, "Oh, who are you? I know who you are." He's like, "How do you?" He's like, "My father died a long time ago." And Rafiki's like, "Nope, wrong again. I know your father." And Simba's like, "Wait, what? How do you know my father?" He's like, "Look, I'll go show him to you." And so he has him run through the jungle, and then Rafiki's like, look, like into the water. And so Simba looks into the water. He's like, it's just my reflection. And then Rafiki's like, no, look closer. And you're like, see, he lives in you. And I want to pause right there because for me, that is a really powerful moment in how I work with people and what I experience myself over the course of my 20s, both being an athlete, saying, no, I'm not an athlete. And it really, at the core of it, is the hero's journey. And so I'll just unpack this a little bit. But he's like, who are you? And he's like, I don't know. Talking about Simba. And for me, in my 20s, I gave up this being an athlete. And I was like, okay, I'm no longer an athlete anymore. Whereas Simba's like, okay, I'm going to run away from Pride Rock. This isn't what I want to like have in my life. It's like I've been banished. That's kind of what it was for him. And so for me, I was like, okay, I quit after my sophomore year. Like, in a way, I've been banished. And you go through this time, and one of the things we'll talk about shortly is self-determination theory and really just like being who you are. But that was something that I had to come to terms with, is being like, oh no, like the athlete lives in you. The warrior lives in you. The badass lives in you. The the best version of yourself, the healthiest version of yourself. It's all, deep down inside, and maybe you can't see it. And so then when he has that scene where Rafiki's like, no, look closer, right? That was my best impression. But it's like, who do you see when you look in the mirror? Because I know for myself, it was in the past, oh, I see someone who's, they got 10, 15 pounds to lose. Or I see someone who's, and you go and list off these physical attributes. And it's like, no, like look closer. And then you're able to see like, oh, wow, like I'm so much more than just like what you physically see. And maybe when you look in the mirror now, you're like, oh, I see a slug. I see someone who's a bum. I see someone who's not, doing anything, worth a damn. And that doesn't mean that you're a slug. That doesn't mean that you're a bum. You're just acting like one. Just like Simba, he's a lion. He's not, he's going and eating those bugs, eating those worms. That doesn't mean he is a worm. But that's just how he was behaving. He was running away from the type of person, in this case, the lion, and the type of, being that he really is. And so the rest of the scene goes on, and you get the big clouds, and Mufasa's like, remember who you are. And Simba's like, how can I? Like, I got to remember who I am. And then Mufasa runs, the cloud goes away, and then Simba's like, oh, okay. Like, I got to go back to Pride Rock. And there's the little funny scene where Rafiki hits him in the head, and he's like, it doesn't matter, it's in the past. And so I say all this because this, for me, is a very symbolic, we'll just say, like, story that actually really mirrored in my life what I experienced, and then what I really want to go and help other people experience, and have done in the past, is being able to go and look in the mirror and see, who is it that you are? Who do you want to be? And if that's not who you're being and who you're acting, well, remember who you are. You're a badass. You're a warrior. You're a lion. You're an athlete. Go and be that. And I had a post that I shared yesterday where it's like, if like, try and act like a lion. A lion is going to go and always chase the goal that it has, whereas a gazelle is always going to run away from something. So a gazelle, they want to be, in the herd. They want to just move fast enough to get away from the thing that it fears, get away from that lion. And so with you and with your fitness and with your health, if you're not chasing the better version of yourself, eventually you're going to get succumbed to the thing that you're trying to avoid, right? You're trying to avoid gaining the weight. You're trying to avoid losing the muscle and atrophying and being a shell of your former self. You're trying to avoid getting injured, even though you're playing a sport that you've played thousands and thousands of times. And so as an athlete, you want to be able to be like the lion and say, okay, I'm going to go and chase this better version of myself, because you'll never get tired chasing that next goal, that next thing for you. But if you're just trying to get out of pain, trying to avoid an uncomfortable situation, eventually it's going to come for you, just like it always comes for the gazelle. And I think there's a big, as I'll kind of transition here, there's a big parallel to, the anxiety that a gazelle would have and what anxiety people come up with. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times it comes from running away from the thing that we know we need to do, right? Because what we need to do is take action on, a laundry list of items. But instead, we run away from it. We kind of punt it. And so I know for me, in my past, a lot of anxiety comes from not being in alignment with what I wanted or what I knew that I wanted to be. And there's that dissonance that happens when that happens. And so I want to introduce this theory that I've talked about. I wrote an article for Steak Life, talked about that actually on a previous podcast where I talked about experience with alcohol, but the self-determination theory. So it's a macro theory of human motivation, personality, that really concerns people's inherent growth and tendencies and like innate, really core physiological needs. I'm going to read from the study real quick, but it was basically, it was not until the 1950s, Edward L. Deci, I think I'm saying that right, and then Richard Ryan wrote a book titled Self-Determination and Intrinsic Motivation in Human Behavior. And that SDT, self-determination theory, was formally introduced and accepted as a sound and empirical theory. And I won't bore you with all the science words of it, but at the base of it, or at the core of it, there's three physiological needs that we all have. One's autonomy. So that's the desire to be causal agents in our own life and be in harmony with, the integrated self. And that doesn't mean that you're independent from other people, but that means that you're going and doing and being who it is that you truly want to be. So coming back to that Lion King example, it's like, you're a lion, be a lion. If you're a lion trying to be a koala bear, that's not even gonna make, it doesn't even make sense as I say that out loud, but like, that doesn't make sense. You're a lion, be a lion. Koala bears are obviously in Australia. But anyway, so autonomy, it's heightened when that person is able to be who they want to be, and it is really suffocated when someone wants to be a certain type of way or do a certain type of thing. And I'll give it specific examples. You want to be someone that makes fitness and health a priority, but you constantly find yourself getting pulled into happy hour, getting pulled into tailgates, getting pulled into Sunday scaries, and you never actually do what it is that you say you want to do, right? That is a lack of autonomy because you're not being who you truly want to be. Then the second physiological need is competence. So that is the ability to seek and be competent and seek control over the outcome, experience masteries, develop skills, be good at your job, be good at working out, being able to go and apply your ability at something, and then seeing a good end result out of that come. And then the third one's relatedness. And this is the desire to interact with, be connected with, and experience caring for others. So we're looking at friends, family, coworkers. These are all people that we want to feel connected with because they're part of our tribe. They're part of our community. Very similar to, a herd of gazelles or a pride of lions. Like that is your squad. But what we run into, and again, this is coming back with anxiety, what I talked about earlier, a lot of anxiety comes from not being in alignment with what we want to do or who we want to be. So you really want to be, come back to it, a lion, an athlete, a warrior, a badass, but you're not taking those actions, taking those steps. And so you get this cognitive dissonance where it's, this is what I want, this is what's happening, and that delta is very, very frustrating. And so when there's a lack of that autonomy, it's going to lead to that anxiety because you are essentially, that time's running out or that something that you fear is coming up. And so I've got a few examples right here. So let's lay this out for health and fitness. Thinking of anxiety similar to how a gazelle who's just constantly on alert is thinking about it. The gazelle is thinking, I should be moving. The lion's coming, but I want to stay with the herd. But like I got enough time, right? The lion's, it's 40 yards away, but once it gets inside 30, then I'll run. And then it gets inside 35, and it's like, all right, it's getting close. Then it hits 30, 29 yards, whatever away, and then the gazelle doesn't move. It's like, I need to move. I need to do something. It's coming. It's close. We still don't move, right? And eventually that thing that you fear is coming for you. But instead it's, I know I should be working on this project for work. I know that Monday is coming, but I really want to go and get happy hour with my friends on Sunday evening. So I'm just going to punt it a little bit more. I know I should be eating, a salad or a smoothie or something that is not a big box of pizza because I know that I need to lose these 20 pounds that I've put on in the last 6 months. But I don't want my coworkers to make fun of me for choosing something different at our team dinner. So I'm just going to punt that problem a little bit more, right? And that line's getting closer. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. I know that I should be getting to bed. I got a race in 2 weeks. I'm running that marathon. I'm running that 5K, whatever it is. But I really just want to have fun at this wedding. I want to let loose. Like I haven't been, in this situation in so long because of COVID, right? So you punt that pending thing that's coming, right? And so the anticipation of the concept, you're punting the anticipation of the consequence. And sometimes the consequence isn't, coming soon. Maybe it's not even real, but some perceived consequence is coming, real or not, that you punt. A good example of a consequence that's not real is like you want to go and talk to someone at a bar and you have so much anxiety about it because you're worried that they're going to throw their drink in your face and say, get away from me, you monster, right? That's an example of something that's not real, but that's a perceived anxiety, something that is coming. And so instead we just punt. We're like, oh, next time they walk by, then I'll talk to them, right? And it's this next time. It's all right. It's not that bad. I'll do it next time. Until next time is right now, and then you have to go and face that thing that you really didn't want to face, but it's going to come. Eventually, it's going to come. Life comes for everyone. So, bringing it back around, remember who you are. right? That thing that Mufasa is saying, he's like, remember who you are. Remember your core values. If you haven't done a core value practice, let's do it, right? I would say find one on your own online, or you and I can jam on that. What are your dreams? Like, what do you really want? If money wasn't an issue, if time wasn't an issue, if you were able to just write down your biggest dreams, what are those? Who are you at your identity, at your core, right? Remember who you are. And so if you want to dive into this self-determination theory of relatedness, competence, and autonomy, you can dive into that, Google that a little bit more. But I want to just real quick talk about another perspective on it, we'll call it, in that our desire to relate and be related to people is going to strip you to some degree of your autonomy and who you want to be. And this is what comes to be at a stalemate. This is what I talked about on the previous podcast, which I want to just touch on it previously. But if you don't remember this, listen to the podcast where I talk about, recalibrating your relationship with alcohol. But when you want to lose weight, but you also want to connect with your friends and be accepted and not, be made fun of, that relatedness and that autonomy are going to clash. And what that leaves you with is a lack of competency, lack of your ability or belief in your ability to do anything about it, to go and say, I want to go and achieve X goal, that I'm going to master this problem that I have, that I can go and achieve this. Right? And so you really want to be able to identify, where am I not being true, to core values? Where am I letting my desire to relate override and overrule that autonomy? And how is that getting in the way of my competency? And when all those three things are checked, that's when you have a lot more fulfillment in your day-to-day. But anyway, so I want to get to what I talked about earlier as well at the very beginning around my experience with body dysmorphia. I talked a little bit about my experience just with kind of overall anxiety, but really wanted to bring up this framework because I think it really helps explain this phenomenon. As humans, why don't we feel better once we hit that weight? Why don't we feel, how we think we should feel when that income that we've always dreamed of happens, when the bank account looks how it looks, when the partner next to us is everything that we want and everything that we said, when I have this, then I'll be happy. How can you be unhappy when you have, that body, that partner, that job, that apartment, that house, that dog, insert whatever it is? How can you be unhappy? And not to go and save celebrities, but this happens where people will say, how can Kanye West or Kim Kardashian, and I don't love either of those people, but in a way I have empathy because they'll be like, how can they be struggling? How can they have mental health issues? They have millions of dollars. Well, you're operating under the assumption that millions of dollars means that you're happy, right? How can someone who is on the cover of magazines, someone who's a model, someone who travels the world and has pictures taken of them, how can they be unhappy with their body? Well, you're assuming that being a certain weight or physique makes you happy, and it doesn't. And so I want to kind of share my experience. And before I do, destination definitely does not equal happiness. And I want to just preface all this with if there is, a mental health condition that you have or you think you might have, do not get advice from someone other than a professional. There are people that work in clinical settings that deal with, actual real mental health disorders, and going and seeing them, it should be your first step of action before you go and just try and solve this on your own. But, I'll share a little bit of my story. In the past, I've weighed over 200 pounds, which I think I'm like 6 foot, 6'1". So over 200 pounds was the heaviest that I've ever been in my life. And at that point, I was the most pumped with where I was at with my health and with my fitness. Like, it was when I was having some of the most fun with my training, with my diet, with my nutrition, with my exercise. I've also been 30 pounds lighter, 170, very lean, visible abs. And I've woken up and been like, I don't like myself. I don't like what I see in the mirror. So how can that happen? How can 30 pounds different in the inverse way be I'm super pumped, super happy with, I don't really feel that good? And really, that's body dysmorphia. It's a disorder where you can't stop thinking about one or more perceived effects or flaws in your appearance. A flaw that appears minor, and flaws super subjective, but it appears minor to you, or other people can't even see it, but you feel so embarrassed, so ashamed, and anxious that you might avoid certain social situations. So, like I said, if this is impacting your daily life, definitely go and seek help. But I just wanted to share the three things that have really helped me with this. And I'll give it a specific example of a time when I felt like I had a flaw that no one else saw that really impacted how I interacted with people. And it was, I want to say 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. Don't quote me on the time, but my mom shared this picture with us because my family was at Lake Roosevelt, which is in central Washington. And there's one time a year where we'll all go with cousins and we'll ride the boat, go sit on the lake, be on the beach and whatnot. And she shared this photo because they were at it, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. The whole family went. I wasn't able to go. But she was sharing, oh, do you remember this? Do you remember this picture? And it came through in the text, and I was like, oh, my God. I do remember that picture because I distinctly remember putting my tank top on in that picture because I didn't want a picture of me taken with my shirt off. And, I'm with my brothers, I'm with my sister, I'm with my cousins, objectively or subjectively, sometimes I forget which one of those words it is, but I would have been the fittest person in that group. Yet I went out of my way to go and put a tank top on so that there wasn't a picture taken without, with my shirt off. And, I think part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast is because I've been thinking over the last couple of weeks about that photo and about, the progress and the strides I've made, and also just coming to terms and grips with like, oh, that's what it was. And remember, this is the Mindful Muscle Podcast. This is not the Mindless Muscle Podcast, the Meathead Muscle Podcast. It's the Mindful Muscle Podcast. And so I wanted to share something that, I've dealt with, but looking back now, probably for a big chunk of my life. I remember being on, God, I can't even remember. I think it might have been MySpace, or it was way back in middle school or high school. And it was dating or relationship advice. And it was like, oh, you're good with girls as long as you got a body like Brad Pitt or a bank account like Warren Buffett. And I was like, got it. Okay, well, I don't have a bank account like Warren Buffett. I just got out of this. I just got dumped by this girl. So I better go get a body like Brad Pitt. And it's like, that doesn't solve anything. I've been really lean. I've been also, on the other side of the coin, I've been really unhealthy, where I'm drinking a ton, have more weight than I should be carrying on my frame, and really not happy with that. And I'll share some of the things that helped me with that. But like I said, just going back and looking at different times and moments in my life, and like those two moments are ones that really stick out, where like I'm in the comment section of the deep, dark internet web, and I'm putting a tank top on for a photo with my family at the lake so that people don't see me with a picture of my shirt off. And it's like, yeah, like that's going to cause some disordered thinking about the body. But I just want to share, again, 100% not a clinician. This is out of scope if you have real mental health issues and disorders that you want to go and work with. But I just want to share 3 things that really helped me get to a point where I'm like, all right, I can own it. I can own my body, which is a really good place to be. It's being able to look in the mirror, and regardless of what you see, being able to look deeper. Again, coming back around to Rafiki, where he's like, no, like look closer, right? Because how many times have you looked in the mirror and you pinpoint or pick out the surface level things? But what you want to be able to do is look closer and say, all right, that's a badass. That's an athlete. That's someone who keeps the commitments that they make to other people and to themselves. That's someone that works really hard. That's someone that, is disciplined. Like, what are the traits that you want to say about yourself? That's a lion. That's an athlete. That's a beast. That's a badass. Whatever descriptive word you want to use. How can you get to a point where you look in the mirror and you see that, not the fact that your right arm is a little bit bigger than your left arm and this little flab? Like, it's just, you want to get to a point. And I'll just dive right into the 3 things that I found. But you want to get to a point to where you can see who you really are and remember who you are. So the first thing that I would say has been really helpful is just education. When you don't know why a problem exists, or even that a problem exists, and then it comes into your awareness, and you're like, oh, I want to get rid of this. I want to get rid of this new problem that I really don't like about myself, but you don't understand why or what's happening exactly. So you're willing to try anything to get rid of it. You're willing to try crazy diets. You're willing to do crazy workouts. You're willing to get advice from random strangers on, comment sections of workout boards. You're willing to do anything, weird things, unhealthy things. Sometimes it's great things. Sometimes you get lucky and you run right into the first thing that is actually helpful. But you're willing to do anything that can fix it. And so what I've found is, especially over the last few years, moving from working in advertising at Amazon into the fitness industry, education is huge because now you understand what's happening, how you can go and change that. And then when you don't take an action that is in alignment with what you want, well, now you can own it. So working with, shout out to Jeremiah, I've had him on the podcast a couple times, working with Jeremiah, being able to understand, here's how you impact your weight going up. Here's how it impacts going down. Here's the macros that are going to be beneficial. Here's the steps you can do to navigate social situations, right? That kind of education now gives me so much more power and control over any situation I find myself in, because I know even if I'm not leaving the maze, I have the map to get out of the maze. And that is a huge thing. Learning myself, whether it's self-study, books, going in and diving deep into what foods give me a stomachache, what foods break me out, what foods make me feel amazing. If you don't take that level of awareness to your own body that you're going to go and live in for 60 to 100 years, like what are you going to go and explore? Because that's your body. It's right there for you. But I think when you have control, and this isn't like the extreme version of this to where you have to control everything, but like I said, I really like that metaphor that I just came up with, so pat on my back. But when you're in a maze and you have the map out of the maze, that gives you much more control and understanding. Okay, I made this choice. I know how this impacts me. If I make this choice, I know this will help me get out of the maze. But then you can really own your decisions, and then you're able to much easily get in alignment with what you want for yourself and for your body. Second thing that was wildly helpful is training for performance. Aesthetics. This is actually, I just did this training for clients yesterday, posted about it on, this would be probably September 6th, but the triangle of training goals. Aesthetic goals, training goals, or aesthetic goals, performance goals, longevity goals. So many people have aesthetic goals, which would be something that is very visual, losing weight, losing body fat so that you can see toned, ripped, muscle definition, whatever physique, building muscle specific to a body part. Those are aesthetic goals. Training for performance is training for a numerical goal. And what's great about that is that it allows you to say, you know what? I'm just pumped that this body can get me to run 26.2 miles. I don't really care what it looks like. I'm just pumped that this body can squat 300, 400 pounds. I don't really care if it's got a little bit of extra fat. I'm just pumped that I can drive the golf ball 310 yards. That's okay if it looks different. And what I'm saying by all this is that when you have a performance goal, it takes your shift and focus off of how you look, and it's giving you much more. It's giving you feedback in the sense that, oh, I'm going and achieving these benchmarks, these numerical milestones for myself, and it's irrespective of what I look like. And so for me, having that time period where for 4 months I'm just training for a marathon and saying, to hell with what my arms look like I just want to run this marathon as fast as I can. It was a very freeing thing, because then I was able to be a lot more grateful and appreciative of dang, this body is so cool, rather than mentally being I wish this body looked like this. And it's well, do you want function or do you want fashion, right? You can have these good looking shoes or sweaters, but I also want some boots that I can just go wear in the mud and not have to worry about getting whatever thing that you would get on your feet. But it's sometimes go and focus on function or how you feel, rather than making sure that it looks the best. And taking that time to train for a performance goal is going to give you that mental break of I need to lose weight, or I need to build this or lose that. and just being like, you know what, like I'm going to go chase something that's much more measurable, something that I have, milestones that are going to help you go and feel good. That's been something for me that anytime I have, that benchmark, and really giving yourself multiple benchmarks, because if the only benchmark you're looking at is weight and you're ignoring measurements, you're ignoring performance in the gym, you're ignoring sleep, you're ignoring stress levels, you're ignoring just how you feel, like in clothes, you're really cutting yourself off from 80, 90% of what you could be experiencing. And then the last one is going to be controlling what you can control. And I'm going to give you just a little, we'll just call it like a journal exercise that you can do for this. But take everything that you're stressed, you have anxiety about, that maybe you need to let go, and just write it all out. So it's like my ankles, I'm just going to go my body, my ankles, my knees, my hips, my shoulders, my head, my neck, my hair, my arms, my core, my torso, like all these worries, anxieties that you have. And just say, can I control this? Can I control the length of my shin bone? Nope. And if it is something you can't control, you just leave it there. And then there's 2 more sections. You'd say, all right, can I take action on this now? Right? If you were 50 pounds overweight, can you take action on that now? Yes. You can go and fill out an application for someone that you trust to go and say, hey, help me on this journey. That is an action that you can take right away. And then, so that's row number 2, or vertical column number 2. Number 3 is, all right, I can't take action on this for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, but here's my game plan to get to that point. So to throw this into a completely different lens, it's like, I live in San Diego right now. Boom. I don't want to live in San Diego. Can I do anything about that now? No. What would be my game plan for that? Okay, well, it's going to take me X amount of months to go in and find a new place, to save up, to go and move to wherever I need to move, to buy a house. Like, what does that game plan look like? And then just being able to be like, all right, I can't control this. I got to let it go. I can action item on this right now. Here's what I need to go and action on right now. And then things that you need to action on, or things that need to be true in the future, what is your game plan for going and doing something about that? And the last thing that I'll wrap up with for this is, when you are taking steps in alignment, taking action in alignment with what you want, that is when a lot of anxiety, subclinical level anxiety, goes away. And when you can just focus on the process and say, my inputs are going to give me the outputs I want. I don't know when it'll happen. I have an idea, but I'm just going to focus on what I can control and let everything else go. That's when you're going to see a lot of anxiety go away, because you're not waiting for the lion to get 40 yards, 30 yards, 20 yards, 10 yards away. Now that alarm bell is going off, but it's because you've punted taking action over and over and over and over. I'm all for feeling really confident about yourself, body positivity, self-love, all these things. But part of that is doing something about it and then loving yourself in the action that you're taking. So I'm going to wrap up this podcast. If any of this resonates with you, would love to have a conversation. Let's talk. You can reach out to me at paul@elementalcoachingproject.com, elementalcoachingproject.com, and fill out an application there, or just reach out to me on social media at paul_Klingen. But I got a program right now that I'm running, Transformation Training Camp, where we dive into nutrition, training, mental performance. It's really for athletes or athletic-minded individuals, former athletes and athletic-minded individuals that want to look in the mirror and love who they see, right? Remember who you are, who's in that mirror. And so with that, thank you guys for listening to the Mindful Muscle Podcast. I'll catch you guys on the next episode.